Hello, everyone. I am Ben Johnson, and this is the Perpetual Chess Podcast. Perpetual Chess is a weekly chess interview show where we talk with accomplished chess players, authors, and personalities about their lives, their careers, and how to improve at chess. Perpetual Chess is brought to you through the generosity of its Patreon and PayPal supporters and by Chessable.com. Hey everyone, we've got a special episode for you this week as we have 3 guests for the price of 1. With the end of COVID lockdown possibly, maybe, I hope, in sight, I've been seeing a lot of chess players talking about their chess goals on social media. I love to see people set lofty but achievable goals and put in the hours to try to make it happen. With that in mind, this episode features 3 guests who will be pursuing the highest title of them all, Grandmaster. The Grandmaster title, of course, is the highest title, and it's attained by achieving a peak FIDE rating over 2,500, and you have to earn 3 what are called norms. For more information about how these titles are done, you can look it up, but of course it's safe to say that it's very difficult. Grandmaster Jesse Cry said earning the Grandmaster title was the most difficult professional thing he had ever done in his life. So my guests for this show are IM Lawrence Trent, IM Sean Nagle, and IM Attila Turzo, interviewed in that order. They have different ages and different professional and family situations, different distances to travel to get the Grandmaster title, but of course they all have the same goal. And they're all so strong already that I find it fascinating to hear what they think they need to do to get even stronger. I also think you'll find it interesting to hear how different their approaches and philosophies are as they relate to chess improvement. I also wanted to give a shout out to all you listening who are plotting your own chess goals, whether it be planning on playing your first OTB over-the-board tournament when the lockdown is over, or whether you're going after the IM title or just looking to climb the next rung on the rating ladder, or maybe just want to play to have fun. Whatever you're doing, I think competing in chess is quite an admirable way to spend your time. My own goals, in theory, should be modest. I would like to get my USEF rating back to 2,200, a place it has already been, but I don't think those 80 points will be easy. And when it comes to chess study, I feel like I'm never doing enough. I think a lot of you might feel the same way. Lastly, I only had room for 3 guests on this special show, but I did want to give a shout out to a few other prominent IMs and give a quick update on the extent to which they will be pursuing the Grandmaster title post-COVID lockdown, as I know people are always interested. Number 1, a friend of the show, many-time guest of the show, I am Kostya Kavutskiy of Chess Dojo fame. Kostya tells me he is going to be getting after it. So that is another person that we can track. And of course, we will be rooting for Kostya to earn that title. I am Eric Rosen, another friend of the show I reached out to. And for Eric, I think it's safe to say it's not as high a priority. Eric's obviously having a lot of success with his Twitch streaming and his YouTube channel. And as of now, his focus is more on upping his blitz game and continuing to help grow chess, but not necessarily playing norm tournaments and stuff like that. I am Kassa Korley, was on episode 69 of this show, and he is trying to become the next African-American Grandmaster after Maurice Ashley. And Kassa tells me he too, like Kostya, will be getting after it and trying to get that title when circumstances permit. Beloved IM John Bartholomew mentioned on Twitter that it is not currently a high priority for him to earn the GM title. Hopefully he'll try it again in the future, but that's where he is now. My old friend IM Greg Shahade, people sometimes ask about. As far as I can tell, Greg has 0 interest in playing slow chess. So even though he's pretty strong, I don't think he'll be going after the Grandmaster title. And then, of course, there's lots of young IMs out there pursuing the title, phenoms like IM Abimanyu Mishru, Carissa Yip, Christopher Yu. It's safe to say they'll all be chasing the title, and guess what? I like their chances. They're young, they're hungry, they're talented. So, of course, that will be interesting to track, but the greater challenge is these adults. So without further ado, let's dive into the interviews. We're going to start off with IM Lawrence Trent. Then we will head to Sean Nagle. Then we will get to IM Attila Turzo. But before we do, last thing, we're going to hear from an important new sponsor. So have a listen to that and then enjoy these interviews, everyone. Listeners, I have to tell you about a spicy new sponsor called Hot Saucery. One of the founders is an old friend of mine. It is a young and hungry company founded out of a passion or perhaps even an obsession for hot sauce. I know that passion and obsession are feelings that many chess players are familiar with, and what goes better with chess than hot sauce? Their site, hotsaucery.co, hold the M, is about discovering global flavors. They've got hot sauces from all over the world. You can pick based on level of spice that you prefer, or they have pre-assembled gift baskets. They sent me a few of them. My personal favorite was called Fly by Jing. I've been having it on pork and chicken, and it is utterly delicious. So if you decide to give them a try, be sure to use the promo code Perpetual at checkout. This will save you 10%. For now, shipping is only in the USA, but we will be following them, and you should follow them at hot.saucery on Instagram. So check it out. Info in the show notes. Let's get to the interviews. And we are here with another one of our GM title chasers, probably the most well-known in the chess community. He is a popular chess commentator for Chess24, the FIDE World Championship, and other mediums. He was one of the co-hosts of the original chess podcast. RIP, may it rise again to the full English breakfast. He's also been on the show back in its early days, April of 2017. You can catch our guest with one of his fellow full English breakfast co-hosts, Macauley Peterson. Of course, Grandmaster Stephen Gordon and Grandmaster Simon Williams also were involved in times. He spent some time working as Fabiano Caruana's manager. But what we're primarily going to talk about today is his chess game. Of course, our guest is a strong chess player, and IM has won many UK National Youth Championships at various ages. He's currently rated FIDE 2399, although he has a peak FIDE rating of 2487. I believe he is 34 years old, although I forgot to ask him, and we're going to verify that in a second. And he is ready to get cracking on the elusive GM title. So let's bring in our old friend, IM Lawrence Trent. What is happening, Lawrence?
Wow, what an intro.
I don't think How did I do? Are you 34?
You did amazing. I mean, you're spot on. 34, washed up, old. Everything was spot on. Thanks for
Excellent. Well, I forgot arch enemy of IM Greg Shahade. I buried the lead there.
Well, I mean, that isn't strictly true. You know, when you're a sort of arch enemy of somebody, the assumption is that that person is in your level, is in your realm, right? He's in your, he's in your atmosphere. Or Greg Shahade lives on a different planet to me, and I don't mean that in a good way. So I've got other rivals out there. Greg, shout out to Greg Shahade if you're watching, buddy, or listening, I should say. I know you're listening because you don't do anything else with your life. You look at a few chessable courses, learn a few lines, tweet the odd how you beat some 2700 Grandmaster who was watching the Champions League and drinking 5 beers at the same time while playing you. And that's about it. But shout out to you nonetheless.
Don't forget the CrossFit, Lawrence. Let's be fair.
Sorry, yeah. And I'm really sorry to hear. Obviously, I guess all the gyms where you are kind of shut down at the moment. You're having to do CrossFit at home and getting ag from the neighbors and everything else. So I'm sorry that you're going through this horrible period.
Coming in from the top rope, Lawrence. I love it. Excellent. Okay, well, now that we got the trash talk out of the way, I'm sure Greg will retaliate in some form.
He certainly will, yeah.
As I told you, definitely one of my top 3 chess rivalries, right up there with Magnus and Anish Giri, to whom you guys are often compared. So the GM chase, Lawrence, 34 years of age. You've got 2 out of the 3 norms. Why now?
Well, that's a good question. So a lot of things have changed for me personally, without going into, too many details. Well, I mean, I've just become a lot more free. Let's talk about it. Let's call
lady listener's going to get excited, Lawrence.
Oh no, I wouldn't do that. That would be a terrible idea, of course. No, I mean, things changed and my perspective changed, and what I realized, what I really need to do to to be happy, really, and to feel fulfilled is go for it. I mean, as you said, I've got 2 norms. I came very close 10 years ago, basically. I just feel like I'm still young enough. It's going to be a lot harder than it was when I was in my 20s, obviously. But, I just have as I say, the time, and I have the motivation suddenly to want to do it as well. So I think it's going to be an important thing for me to try and strive for. And, but there's been a lot of chatter on Twitter as well recently, haven't there, about, other IMs, similar guys or guys that are well known in chess who are doing great things as well. And I'll put Greg in there. I'll put him in there. That'll make him happy. But, the likes of John Bartholomew, Kostya, Kavutskiy, myself, Attila Turzo from Hungary, and there are a bunch of others if I've forgotten some names there. But
yeah, I'll be interviewing Sean Nagle from Minnesota. He's as far as I can tell, he's a well-behaved dad. So he's not bringing the ruckus on Twitter, but right. I think he's going to be working on the title.
Right. No, so there's a whole bunch of guys, and obviously lockdown as well has kind of given us a new perspective on things, and being not able to play chess and being not able to travel, it does make you appreciate things a lot more. So there's that element as well. And so, it just feels like the stars are aligned at the moment, where I'm in a place where I can really go for it. And I'm going to be getting a coach. I've mentioned this, a few people already know this, so I'm going to be taking it very seriously. And a long time ago, none other than Magnus Carlsen himself said to me, "Why the hell are you not a grandmaster yet?" And, when the world champion and maybe the greatest of all time tells you that, it kind of leaves a lasting, what's the word I'm looking
impression. Yeah.
Impression on you. Exactly. And, I'm going to finally, because, we're going to talk about lots of other things, I'm sure, today, as we said before the call. There are lots of things you can do, but ultimately getting the title when you've dedicated your life to this game is the ultimate reward. I know my limitations. I'm never going to be a great player. I'm never going to be 2,600. I'm just not good enough, but I do believe I am good enough to get that title. And then when I finally kick the bucket, maybe they can write it on my tombstone or something. That would be nice.
Okay. Well, Lawrence, first of all, I mean, from my vantage point and from most chess fans' vantage point, you are a great player, despite all the ribbing you take from your many grandmaster friends. Grandmaster title or no, it's amazing what you've already accomplished. But I mean, I'm still excited for the journey, because for someone like me, I can't even dream of dreaming of it, So it'll be fun to watch. So first of all, I have seen somewhere in one of your broadcasts, I think, where you did mention that you had lined up a high-level coach. So as a journalist, it's my obligation to ask if you're able to share who it is, or if it's still top secret.
I'm not going to do that just yet. And the reason is because, firstly, I haven't started sessions. Secondly, we've got to iron out some details. But he's a very well-known guy. And I've got another guy who's also reached out to me, who is also extremely well-known and might be helping me more with the psychological side of things. I always felt like that was one of my big barriers, because you can probably imagine the number of times I've come half a point or, a point off at getting the final norm, right? Where it's just, some psychological collapse. Trying to get different perspectives there. So there's somebody else I've got in mind who I think will be able to help me out or just guide me. Before, when I was playing more actively a few years ago, I was even in touch with basically a mindset coach, where I was going through breathing routines before games, some meditation, because I always felt like nerves were my biggest enemy in chess. I even after all these years, when the pressure is on in the moment, I felt like I got flustered. And when your nerves go, your calculation goes out the window and you make big mistakes, especially in time scrambles and that sort of thing. So I'm going to be working on that, and obviously working on the technical side of the game, where getting an opening repertoire for a start would be quite decent. I don't have a proper opening repertoire. I've got to work on my endings. They're pathetic. Everything. So it's going to be a big undertaking. But yeah, I'm excited. And one thing, perhaps we can delve into this as well, Ben, is, when you hear the greatest minds in the world talk about backing something in life, they all say, if you're going to lump your net worth, or if you're going to lump a huge amount of money on something, do it on yourself, right? Back yourself. Back something where you're in full control of the result. And that's what I plan to do. And I will be accepting wagers from anybody who doesn't believe I can accomplish this in a certain time period. And we're going to get proper lines. Everything's going to be done properly. And I will empty the clip, so to speak, on myself. And if I fail, I'll go broke. And if I don't, then I'll get the title and I'll make a bit of extra money on the side. So that's going to be fun.
Excellent. Yeah, when you took to Twitter.
If I get the action. I'm not sure, because a lot of people, I get messages, through the commentaries, Ben, I get the trolls saying how terrible I am, and, and so on and so forth. And, but do people actually have the stones to put their money where their mouth is? That's the question I have for you. And
yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, I'm torn because, as you know, I used to be a professional gambler, so it always perks, and I love the idea of all these chess prop bets. Poker professionals like Mike McDonald and Olivier Bousquet, and even Fader Holtz. They've kicked around the idea of these massive chess achievement prop bets, but when push comes to shove, it seems like no one wants to do the work. It's just so hard at the end of the day to actually commit to putting everything else aside in life, even if because obviously for most people, it's the financial piece of the puzzle that makes it just a non-starter. You might dream that, the proverbial you might dream, like, I could make GM if it weren't for these pesky children and this wife and this job, you know? But these poker players are in a unique situation where often they have some money and they know people who have money. So someday I would love to see a prop bet, a big bet. Now, so I know you've mentioned it on Twitter and there's been some back and forth. Do you have anything currently booked?
No, I've got absolutely nothing, because there aren't any, we don't have any lines set up yet. When I did the survey of what people thought, whether I could do this in 2 years, a few very well known voices who have got no skin in this game, have got no interest. Basically, they were floating around the idea that in 2 years, I would be something like a 20 to 25% dog. So something in the region of 4 or 5 to 1.
And you take that bet?
I would take that bet. Anything around that price range. If anybody out there wants to get at me, we can do all kinds of stuff. We can escrow some stuff, whatever. I mean, if you want to do it small, that's also fine. I can do it in small pieces. But yeah, anything in the 4 to 5 to 1 region, 20 to 25%, I would take, and that would be 2 years from the first game played. So the first game I play, it would be 2 years after that. Now, obviously, there would be a slight caveat in all of these props, which would be like if Corona got out of control again, and basically they shut down air travel or something like that. Or we could even do something like a 200 game. It doesn't have to be in time exactly. It could be number of games, and that way, again, if Corona comes around the corner, I can say, well, it doesn't really matter. It just matters on the number of games. So yeah, Sutovsky said 20%. I think who else?
This is Grandmaster Emil Sutovsky.
Yeah, sorry, I think
the president of FIDE.
Ramesh.
Oh, She should know.
Said something around that area, 20 to 25%. And this is, of course, including a bunch of work. And then there are a lot of people that just say you've got no chance.
Yeah, I've heard some naysayers. I won't put anyone on blast.
Yeah,
But I mean, and as I mentioned, I'm kind of torn because as a gambler, I have to admit, my temptation would be to bet against someone, and it's nothing against you. It's just the actual task. Nothing against you personally.
No.
But I want you to do it, I'm interviewing you, Sean Nagle, and I interviewed Attila Turzo, and they'll all be aired as one episode. I want all you guys to do it because I think it's so admirable to put all those things aside and to do it. So, but on the other hand, if no one bets against you, are you still going to go after it if no one bets against you?
I guess I'll still do it because ultimately money is money. It comes and goes, and it's not the be all and end all. And the title itself has got much more intrinsic value. It's got much more personal value. So I will still be motivated to go and do it. But of course, if I had a bit of something on the line to really get the juices flowing, that wouldn't hurt. But Ben, my door is open, buddy. If you want to have a little, just a little tickler.
Just wet my beak.
Just to wet your beak, just a little bit. I'll let you have a little piece for as small as you want.
I'll think about it. Yeah, I'm not the high stakes gambler I used to be, but I'll think about it. It's,
all right.
It's just I'm really rooting for you. So it would be hard to even find the right amount to bet because if I bet a too small amount, I'm still going to be rooting for you.
Yeah, I'm sure we can find me. And as I say, if I get lines, I've got a few guys ultimately who I'd like. Mike won't be listening to this, but Mike McDonald, aka Timex. For all of you who don't know Mike McDonald, he's an extremely successful poker player, entrepreneur, value hunter when it comes to props. Made a lot of money in crypto, his business, poker shares. And it is basically knows how to make
markets,
solid lines and markets, exactly.
And a chess enthusiast too.
Chess enthusiast, huge.
Yeah.
1800-ish, 1700, 1800, very strong player in his own right. And so hopefully Mike will, if he's got a few minutes and I speak to him, he'll actually be able to churn out a few lines for me. So then, when he's the authority on this. So if he makes a line, people will just say, oh, okay, that's a fair line. So
if he could actually set it on poker shares, that would be amazing.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be on poker shares because I just don't think that it'll generate enough interest. I don't think it's value for them to have it on there. But if he wants to spend just a few minutes working it out, then that would be great. But I don't know. Again, Ben, I just don't know who's going to really bet against me, lay me odds. Is there anybody who's actually got the cojones to do it? Because I will go large if they give me as large as I possibly can, if they give me the opportunity. But we'll see.
So how much are we talking?
I don't know. It'll be a six-figure bet. I don't know.
Wow. Okay. And you'd put the money in escrow.
Well, I would try. I mean, we could come to some arrangement, where, we could put half the money in escrow or something, or, deposit, or there would be, or even contracts. I don't know how we would do it, but.
Okay, excellent.
I'll go for it. I'll go for it.
That would be so much fun.
That would be fun.
So Lawrence, whatever happens, when it gets lined up, you got to ping me because I'll announce it on the podcast. Yeah, I'm sure listeners will be tracking. But let's talk. So you mentioned, let's get to what you need to do chess wise, which you've gotten into a little bit. So we have a few questions from supporters of the podcast. First one is from Speaking of Chess Twitter, Neil Bruce, who of course has done
I know Neil. Yeah,
great job helping me out with some book recap podcasts. So Neil says, Lawrence, I'm a big fan and excited to see your motivation and effort to become a GM. You can do it. Quick question: what are the biggest knowledge and skill gaps between IMs and GMs, and what are you doing to close those gaps?
Great question. So. I think again, I'll slightly alter that question because I would say that there are so many gradients of GM or levels of GM now. It's quite hard to categorize it as just GM, right? So, for example, there are grandmasters who are floating around 2,500 that play on the open circuit, where I think my skill gap to them is close to zero, if anything, right? They got the GM title maybe a while ago. They float around these Swisses. It's a tough life. I don't envy that life at all. Trying to make a buck here and there. And my skill gap between, for example, me and them is probably very low. However, when you start getting to 2550, 2600 consistent levels like that, then the skill gap is clearly much greater. I would say it's a bit of everything. I mean, it's conversion, I think, is a really big one, where their conversion rates of winning positions is just higher. It's obviously their general theoretical knowledge when it comes to, for example, even end games, where the number of times I've blown a promising position through poor mismanagement in end games is astounding. It's things like just being taking better practical decisions a lot of the time as well. Lots of things, just experience in general seems to help these guys. Time management, not getting nervous. So but I wouldn't say, like, if you would say to me, is it calculation? I'd say absolutely not. Right. So okay. I would say that if
you've got some strengths, that's good. Because Attila said the opposite yesterday. Attila, he feels his calculation is by far the weakest. So it's definitely it's not one thing it's not one universal thing.
No, I don't think it's not. I mean, when I'm really focused and I'm calculating with the best, I really feel like I can go toe to toe with a lot of these guys. Obviously, when you get much higher up, no. But if we're talking in the, let's call it, but lower level GM, and I hate to use that word because I don't want to seem condescending, but if you are a grandmaster who's 2500 or 2450, right, you are at, objectively speaking, the lower echelons of the GM category. With those guys, I do feel like I absolutely go toe to toe with them. So calculation has never been my weakest point. I think I'm quite a decent tactician. I feel like I've got a very good feel in dynamic positions, initiative, these kind of stuff. Another thing that I feel I do very poorly, and my good friend Ali Mordazavi, who won't listen to this because he's far too busy and wouldn't dare stoop as low to listen to a podcast with me. He's an international master, very successful businessman. Ali said to me something years ago. He said, apart from the fact zero about end games, which is maybe not exactly true, but pretty much on the money. He says, you still aren't learning how to do nothing well. And I think that's an incredibly tough skill that a lot of grandmasters know how to do. And when I think of some of the English grandmasters, the Arkles and the Hebdens and the stalwarts of the English game, they really do know how to do nothing in a position when it's required. And that is a really tough art. Do you know what I mean by that, Ben?
Club players struggle with it too.
Yeah, club players as well. But I mean, everybody up to, super duper strong players. How do you know when to just not do anything? Sit on your hands, or at least make it seem like you're not doing anything, but you're making some kind of mild improvements to your position. That I think is a big skill gap as well between IMs and GMs. But as I say, there is an argument here where ELO is actually the predominant indicator now, rather than the title, right? If there's an IM who's rated 2550, and there have been, and there's a GM who's rated 2450, who's the stronger player?
Right.
Well, if the volume of games is sufficient enough, you're going to have to say the IM. Doesn't matter that he's only an IM, right? He just maybe hasn't got the requirements for the norms for whatever reason. So I think it's more about ELO. My ELO at the moment, as you mentioned in the introduction, is the lowest it's been in, pretty much the lowest it's been in probably 15 years. So I've got a long way to go with that.
Yeah, that's got to be the biggest challenge, right? I mean, one
I think
norm is totally doable. Well,
yeah,
for you, not for me,
I
but
mean, I think one norm is totally doable. I could just fluke it in some closed tournament, some open tournament. There are many ways just to fluke the norm. I just have one decent tournament where, and there isn't a luck element. We talk about chess not having any luck. But when you're right on the cusp, as I am, like of being able to achieve, because I'm never going to get a 2750 performance, right? So I'm never going to perform at 2800. So my GM scores are going to be right on that 2600 performance mark. And I can tell you from the dozens of tournaments I've played in the past 20 years, you need to get a little bit lucky to get there. You're never going to play perfectly, at least unless you're a super duper strong kid. Somebody like me, 34 years old, I'm never just going to play astounding chess for 9 or 10 rounds. There's going to be a moment in round 6 or round 7 where I'm going to need to get a bit lucky, where I'm going to be either gifted half a point or I'm going to be able to save half a point or something of that ilk, or I even swindle an entire point. That sort of thing, I think, for somebody like me is required. I'm just not good enough to go through an entire tournament with a solid performance like that, unless, of course, the coaching works. And then I think, wow, this coaching stuff actually works. But as things stand, I can't see that happening. So yeah, the actual norm itself is not is potentially not the issue. It's the points. And that's going to be that is something I've been thinking about. Like, how am I supposed to gain 100 rating points? Okay, how what is the right way? What is the right method? Because losing points is a real possibility as well.
right.
I mean, like, I played one of the last tournaments I played in was the Sitges Open in Barcelona. It'll be 2 years ago now, right? Pretty much, because last year was a dud. And, I had a very average performance there. But my goodness, have I never struggled so much in an open tournament. I was playing young guys from India, from, the Eastern Bloc, from wherever. And I was just under the cosh or struggling. I'm playing a guy who's 1900, 8 years old from India. He's making me grind and sweat it, and he's putting up resistance. And I'm like, goodness me, so, that sort of tournament, actually, the other thing that I'm going to have to do really for the first time in my life, Ben, is tournament selection, actual game selection. You were a poker pro. You never sat down at a table, on the right of somebody who was, an aggressive, loose, aggressive, strong player, because you knew that was a minus EV situation, right? So am I going to now go and fly to a tournament where, there are 1,000 young guys playing, and to get the norm, I need 7 out of 9? I don't know if I am. Maybe I'm just going to be a bit more smart about where I play. So that's going to be a factor in things. So lots and lots of things to think about when it comes to actually getting the points.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Sitges, by the way, the aforementioned tournament outside of Barcelona, that venue looks amazing. I really want to play there someday.
Oh.
How was it away from the board?
Sorry?
How was Sitges away from the board?
Sitges away from the board. I mean, it's a quiet little town because it's about 40 minutes from Barcelona center. What I did was, actually, I had a busted up knee last time I went, so it wasn't as fun as it should have been. But you can get on a bike and ride along the sea. You've got little restaurants and bars in town. They've got a restaurant and bar at the place as well. Lots of activities, side activities as well. The air is nice. I do tend to like playing in tournaments where there's a sea and a beach. I have to say I am drawn towards those tournaments for whatever reason. I would highly recommend it. The organization is great. The tournament is obviously extremely strong. But it's a bit crowded as well. It's a little bit, if you don't like crowded tournament, then maybe it's not for you, but they're just obviously trying to give everybody an opportunity. But yeah, places like Sitges, Gibraltar, one of my favorites. And the only tournaments I've ever won have been by the beach. So maybe there's a pattern there.
Yeah, although I can't think of, like you mentioned, that you sort of infer that it might be better for you to go for sort of closed round robins rather than. Sorry, go ahead.
Precisely. I mean, there are so many. I mean, I actually got invited to one in November, end of November. The one that I've played in a couple of times before over in Aarhus in Denmark. And Rasmus Skuda, who's the organizer there, asked me to come up, play in the chess house there. And it was right in sort of Corona. I mean, we're still in unknown territory time, but it was really, like, if you remember back to November, borders and everything else. And I just said, you know what, I'm just not going to do it, especially because I said to myself, well, you're going to train first before you go and play. So, that's the other thing that I'm really not sure how it's all going to work with Corona. You know, we're all going to have to mask up and it's all going to be weird. But the closed tournaments are definitely something I'll be looking at. The GM closed tournaments, they do still have a lot in Europe, or they did have at least. I'll be keeping my eye out for those. Ideally, a closed tournament with a bunch of slightly let's put it like this, unmotivated grandmasters and not too many young guys would be great. Just, that's the perfect mix. You know what I mean?
I hear you. Yeah, I feel the same way. All right. So Lawrence, to wrap up, let's hear the training regimen. So we know you're going to get a coach. You're going to work on sort of holistic approach. So get your mind right, get your psychological game right.
Yeah.
But you've identified your strengths and weaknesses. You feel like calculation is relatively good, but you need a lot of work on your openings and you need to work on your conversion. So how does a player at your level do those things?
Well, that's where hopefully having a coach actually, comes in handy, because he's going to be able to basically give me exercises or give me things to go over where I can just refine everything. So it's going to be just volume material, actually studying, actually picking up chess books, actually picking up a chess set, sitting there and doing it, because I haven't.
And we're talking hours, hour after hour. You ready?
I was told that I have to do 2 to 3 hours a day minimum in order for this to be realized. And I think that basically that's spot on. I will need to do 2 to 3 hours of serious, not sodding around playing 1 minute chess on lead chess. This is like properly, like as if I was studying for an exam. And I'll be honest with you, I've never, ever, ever done it with chess, ever. Even before when I got my IM title and stuff, I never had a consistent training regime where I would be studying every day properly. So I'm going to do it for the first time. And the other thing that's going to be really important is being physically fit. So along with the chess stuff, I'm going to have to, I'm working out every day at the moment, but that's going to have to be, the intensity of that's going to have to be upped as well. I want to be fit. I want to be cut. I need to lose a few kilos. So, because the concentration for long periods of time, need to improve my stamina. I'll be going back to boxing, hopefully, when things open up. So a lot of things have to come together in order for this to happen. And you know what? I think if I truly apply myself, if I really, truly apply myself, I think I'll do it. If I don't, and if I do it, if I try and cut corners, and if I'm half-hearted, then I think it will be just, I might gain.
And it'll be a good publicity stunt.
Then it'll be a good, but I mean, I get nothing out of it, right? So more heartbreak. I'm done with heartbreak. 2020 was enough. I want some. What's the opposite of heartbreak? Some heart.
Yeah, I don't know.
Mending. Some heart mending. So that's the idea, and we'll see how it all pans out.
Okay. Well, Lawrence, I mean, like I said, I really am rooting for you. Really hope you can put your feet to the fire. I do find it somewhat heartening that you say you never grinded that hard, and that's interesting. I mean, you've achieved a lot, actually. I mean, to have never really put in many hours a day working on chess. So maybe there's hope for you, Lawrence.
I mean, who knows? I mean, only, as they say, only time will tell. But I think, honestly, if I really, hand on heart, I've never studied chess properly. Like, not like it were, like some of the other guys have done, especially the top guys and the guys who still do it. I've just never done it, which is why, when I have a coach, which I haven't had since I was about 15, he's going to, especially if I'm paying quite a lot of money for it as well, it's going to be like, oh, it's going to give me that push. I realized I do need a bit of discipline from outside discipline, because I can get a bit distracted if I'm just doing my own stuff. But if I'm, that's why boxing, for example, is something that's I've grown to love, because the discipline element there, somebody pushing me, is basically what I need in order to perform. So we'll see. We will see.
We will. All right, I have one more question, Lawrence, because I just thought of it. I mean, obviously, you're friendly with Magnus. You've been the manager of Fabiano, so you kind of have a unique perch to have insight into how people like that approach their studies. What have you learned from those guys?
Well, I mean, what have I learned from those guys? Well, those guys are geniuses. That's what I've learned. No, I mean, Magnus might even be slightly different case, because I think Magnus, I don't think has some, or never, not for many years anyways, had some kind of sort of detailed training regime where he would do 3 hours per day. I think the thing with Magnus, and I think he said this before, was, he was always thinking about chess, he always is thinking about, so he's always working on his chess in one way or another. And obviously he's so good that he can work remotely, if I can put it.
Must be nice playing beach volleyball and you can tell people you're working on your chess.
Exactly. So he's kind of always thinking about it, or he saw something and he finds it interesting, and he'll, whereas there are other guys, if you look at the top players like the Fabis and the Wesleys, who actually do sit down with a coach, with a computer or whatever else, and actually grind. So, I mean, I can't really, I can't really take anything from them in the sense of, what I should be doing. All I know is that I should be doing something consistently. That's the only thing. It's just about being consistent. The actual method of the consistency is unclear. It's whatever works for you. But I think that, just if you make a promise to yourself as well, like, especially if you invest in yourself, not only time, but hopefully, if I've got a bunch of cash on the line as well, then I really have got no other option, right? I'm just going to work. It's going to work and achieving a goal. And
so anyone listening, if they're interested in betting against Lawrence, you could say they're kind of performing a service. I mean, you want them to, right, Lawrence?
I do. I want them to. And, if you want to really get at me with a serious offer, you've got my Twitter at Lawrence Trent IM. You can DM me or just message saying that you're interested in doing. And as I say, it doesn't have to be large or anything like that. I could do a lot of cumulative stuff. I'll create a spreadsheet or something like that, and we'll settle, when the terms are there. But ultimately, what I'm looking at is something like a 2-year or 200 game bet. I would prefer doing the yearly bet, because probably, it's just
keeps you from dragging it out, for one thing.
Keeps me from dragging it out. Exactly. 200 games I could drag out for 5 years. So just the 2-year thing would be best. And I'm looking at somewhere in the region of 4 or 5 to 1. So something in the middle, 4.5 to 1. And if you think that I've got absolutely no chance, which is, a totally valid point of view, get at me, and we'll see if we can do some business.
Good stuff, man. Well, I can't wait to see how this unfolds, and make us proud, Lawrence, and keep us posted.
I will. And Ben, I want to say thank you so much, and thank you again for your service to the chess community. Your continued service. This podcast has been going for so long now. It's really great that you've managed to keep it going. And everybody's support this podcast in any way you can see fit.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. That reminds me, any FEB, Full English Breakfast reunion episodes in the hopper?
I did actually talk to Macauley a few weeks ago about it. We briefly spoke about it. We haven't got anything penciled in just yet. That's because we're all doing lots of stuff. I mean, we're all still actually involved in chess, funnily enough. But coordinating it and getting it on, we haven't managed to do yet. But I'm sure there will be something in the future.
Excellent. That's good to hear.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Lawrence. All right. Good luck and thanks for the info. And listeners, if anyone's interested in motivating Lawrence, you can either hit him on Twitter, or if you need help contacting him, I can help with that. All right. Thanks, Lawrence.
Thanks very much. Cheers, Ben. Cheers.
As always, Perpetual Chess is proud to be brought to you in part by Chessable.com. Chessable is a chess learning website that utilizes its Move Trainer technology to help you learn and remember opening lines, tactical patterns, and endgames. It is endorsed by GM Magnus Carlsen and features courses from IM John Bartholomew, Sam Shanklin, Wesley So, and so many others. Chessable has over 100,000 members and features hundreds of courses both for free and for purchase. So if you haven't checked it out yet, please go to chessable.com and take a look around. And we are back for another guest on our special feature of IMs who will be pursuing the Grandmaster title. And joining me momentarily will be the 9-time state champion of Minnesota. He's often tangled with and become friendly with Minnesota chess stars IM John Bartholomew and Grandmaster Andrew Tang, aka Penguin GM. He is a lawyer by training. He works in corporate and securities law. He was on a partner track until his first child arrived in 2013. He now has 3 kids and has mostly been staying at home with them in recent years, but also still practicing law and working on his chess. He has 38 years of age, a FIDE rating of 2417 with a peak of 2445, and I am ready to bring him in. I am Sean Nagle. Thanks for joining us, Sean.
Hi, Ben. Thanks a lot for having me. It's really an honor to be on the podcast.
Thanks. I appreciate it. Yeah. So what's in the water in Minnesota, first of all, Sean? How are you guys so good at chess?
Yeah, we definitely punch above our weight, I think it's fair to say, with the John and Andrew Tang that you mentioned, and Wesley So also lives here, but we can't.
Oh yeah, that name rings a bell.
We can't take credit for growing him from the ground up. So
potential good training partner, though. I'm sure he'd be glad to help you out, right?
Oh, absolutely. He's the nicest guy in the world.
And you live outside of Minneapolis, correct?
Yeah, I live in a suburb of Minneapolis. It's called Plymouth, and it's actually the same suburb as Andrew Tang's family, and other side of town from John Bartholomew, though.
Okay, and where is Wesley in the great state of Minnesota?
They moved recently, so I don't know exactly, but also like suburban twin. All of us are in the different suburbs of the Twin Cities of Minneapolis area.
Okay, and have you ever seen him in the wild there in Minnesota?
Yeah, when he first came, which I don't know how many years ago that was now, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I was fortunate to interact with him a fair bit because he was kind of new here, and he hadn't quite made it as big as he has now. So we even were able to have some kind of training sessions just because I was, the closest, best thing. And of course, I learned a lot from that, but ostensibly that was for his benefit. But he's I think upgraded his training partners since then, presumably. But no, he makes appearances, in connection with he used to play for the Minnesota Blizzard chess team. So we saw him in connection with that, and also he'll show up at like the bigger state tournaments and kind of make an appearance, and he's given a lecture or two at the local chess club. So he's definitely part of the scene and very well liked.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. And with what he's been doing in these online events in particular, I feel like if it were fully open for any chess player to challenge Magnus for the world championship, I kind of think at this moment he might have the best chance to win. But alas, he won't be the one playing Magnus at the end of this year.
No, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, Sean, let's get to your chess career. So you were top player in Minnesota for many years, and then life got in the way, as it tends to do. So what's your relationship been with chess in the past 15 years?
Sure. So I lived in Minnesota my whole life until the year 2000 when I graduated high school. And at that point, so I became a national master at age 15 and a FIDE master at 17 in like the 2400 USCF ballpark, kind of at the end of high school. And then I went to college at University of Chicago, where I was actually able to keep playing chess, not like devoting time to studying chess, but we did have a team and we did go to the Pan Ams and things. But there was a small rating dip during that period as there was less chess happening. And then law school in Michigan from 2004 to 2007. And then since then, I've been back in Minnesota, pretty much restricted to just a few tournaments a year in Minnesota, like the Minnesota Open every year. And then there's the way it works in Minnesota is we have the Minnesota Open, and then the top 6 players from that play in a round robin called the Minnesota Closed, and that determines the state champion. So every year I would do those 2 tournaments, and occasionally something else.
Okay. And would you train in advance of those tournaments?
Yeah. So we'll talk more, I guess, about my current training approach and changes recently. But in general, over the years, there hasn't been a lot of time for studying, just realistically. So yeah, kind of in the month leading up to a tournament, it'd be let's try to learn some openings all of a sudden, or let's do some tactics. But no working with a coach or playing training games with anybody or anything like that. And honestly, still I'm not doing either of those things. But pretty minimal training, I would say, really throughout since high school.
Okay. And are you playing online? Do you is chess like sort of constantly in your life, or is it on the back burner at times?
Chess, it's always here for sure. So every day, virtually every day, I think something related to chess. Often that's just a blitz game on my phone. But it's always around for sure.
Okay. And now you say you're kind of thinking about or starting to change your regimen. So what's happening now, Sean?
So backing up, I guess one step before that is something that was surprising to me. I don't want to sound like a humble brag, I guess, but in the period after, say, college, and so right after college, I went to Budapest for 3 months because I had some time between the end of college and the beginning of law school. And I got 2 of my needed 3 IM norms in Budapest. Then I came back and there wasn't a lot of big norm tournaments or any norm tournaments happening for me. But my rating did pretty consistently move up over the years. And that wasn't based on any chess study or chess training. So it makes me feel like there's room for chess improvement based almost on increased maturity and life experience. And that's something that I think I need to rely on to compete with some of these youngsters who, have quicker minds and more time to study, but they don't have the experience or the maturity. So somehow the climb just kept happening, and it was easy maybe to get complacent and think, well, that would continue indefinitely. But in the last couple of years, I seem to have ridden that as far as I could ride it. Right. So my USCF rating had at some point got up to 2580 or something, and now it's dropped it's in the lower 2500s. So I feel like, okay, I need, if I want to keep improving, I need to change what I'm doing. It's not reasonable to expect different results unless I'm doing something differently.
I think someone had a quote about that once.
Yeah, or what? Yeah. And another quote that I like is so you're, I think, talking about the definition of insanity. Quote. But another quote is what got you here won't get you there, right? So what got me to my level of IM, it's not going to be enough to get me to that next level. And I guess we skipped the final step, which was I had my 2 IM norms from 2004. And then in 2014, 10 years later, I got the final IM norm at the World Open. And that was
in an open tournament.
Yeah. So I went to DC. It was in DC, not the old Philadelphia. And I played in 2 back-to-back tournaments. I forget, it's called the Washington International or something like that.
Yeah, the Philadelphia when it's in Philly, but
yeah,
but I guess that year.
And it led then into the World Open, and I did pretty poorly in that first tournament. But then in the World Open, everything kind of went my way. So I was very fortunate, and that was, I left the law firm entirely in 2013, and I didn't go back part time until 2015. So. And we only had 1 child at that point. So I was able to kind of leave town for 2 weeks, go stay with a friend who lived in DC and just do those tournaments. So that was very fortunate for me.
Yeah, that must have been a good feeling. And I did just want to explain for any listeners, the reason that I'm impressed that it's an open tournament is as I discussed in the interviews that you guys will hear with Lawrence and Attila, in these closed tournaments, you can know for sure that you'll get a norm if you attain a certain performance. Also, if you heard my interview with FM Peter Giannatos about how they put on norm tournaments down in Charlotte, he was saying like the person can know going in that all they have to do is perform. But anytime you play in an open tournament, that is not going to be the case because there's a high degree of randomness in who you play. And there's a lot of sort of strict rules about like when the norm is attainable. And that's true for the IM norm that Sean thankfully attained, as he mentioned, but it becomes even more exacting as you reach a higher level. When you need a GM norm, you need even more things to fall into place, obviously. So you can have an amazing performance, but if you didn't play the right people, you still might not get a norm. So, so yeah, that of course factors into planning if you're going to chase the GM title, as we'll discuss. But I want to read a Patreon question to you, Sean. This is from Aaron Holloway Nahum, who I've been asking this question in some form to our other GM chasers as well, which is, what does a GM understand / know put into practice about chess that an IM doesn't, and what do you specifically need to work on?
Sure, that's a great question, and I really wish I knew the exact answer, because then I would just do it and I would be a GM. But it's also it's a good question because it makes me think. You know, sometimes we just keep chugging away at what we're doing without actually thinking, is this what I need? Is this going to be what makes me improve? And I don't think it's a difference in kind. I think it's a difference in degree, in a variety of. It's not like a GM knows X, which IM is lacking. I think every GM and IM is different, but the GM overall has fewer gaps in their play, so they're just consistently stronger across the board. And speaking only for myself, IMs can be shockingly weak in basic areas. You know, IM, we don't necessarily know that much about a lot of stuff. You know, there's still so much to know and so much to learn that there are certainly even, say, 2200s or 2000 players who might say know more about rook endings than a particular IM does, right? So, like, for me, maybe I never learned, basic rook endings. But yeah, you could still become an IM because you compensated for it in other ways. So, right, any strong player has their strengths and you try to shield your weaknesses, or prevent those from becoming irrelevant in actual games. So for me personally, I've always I would say, had a rather underdeveloped opening repertoire. And so it's like being a boxer or something with there's you're weak in like some ribs, and you really don't want to get hit there, so you're kind of favoring that side.
Right.
I mean, I'm steering my chess games in the way that will be successful for me. So in my case, that meant I play the exchange variation against the Slav every time,
Okay.
And am I an expert on it? No, I don't. Have I honestly even studied any theory to the extent there is much on that? No. Or memorized Grandmaster games? No. But I've played so many games with it, including blitz games. I just feel comfortable in that kind of stable setup, know where the pieces go. And so like that's an example of maybe I have this weakness, but I'm not going to go into a Najdorf poison pawn variation because that's not my strength, knowing the theory really deep. And for me, I've been able to have the success I've had to date with that sort of a repertoire, because maybe I'm better than the average, say, FIDE master or national master in other ways, so I can get this equal game and then outplay them based on other characteristics. But that doesn't really work if I need to go play against a tournament full of GMs and beat them, starting from a dead equal position every time with white. It's just not enough. It's just not going to cut it. So for me, as a coach, I have done coaching over the years, less so since child number 3 has arrived, just because of time limitations. But I give the usual advice of openings aren't everything, and that's not where you should spend all your time. But I honestly feel for me, the opening repertoire is just objectively a weakness of mine. So, I've played the Exchange Slav every time. I've basically got the IM title by playing G6 on move 1 as black almost every game. Again, not necessarily knowing a lot of theory about it, but just having experience and comfort. But you get into trouble against GMs.
Okay.
Well,
that's approach. In a sense that seems like it could be heartening because that's more easily fixable, as Greg Shahade recently discussed. That it doesn't require these feats of superpower mental acuity. You just kind of have to do the work. Do you agree?
I agree. And like him and other of your guests have talked about, it's certainly easier than it's ever been to upgrade your openings just wholesale. And Chessable has been a great resource for that. And Greg has an excellent YouTube video where he really goes through his personal process for improving his openings, which is one I had kind of espoused myself, but had never really crystallized in the way that he did in that video. Which you have your repertoire, you play blitz games. After each blitz game, you check where did you go wrong, and then you can actually build your own course on Chessable. You don't just need to do the courses that you can obtain there. You can create your own kind of opening tree and then drill those mistakes you keep making so that you kind of piecemeal, bit by bit, can build up your repertoire just by, if you play a lot of blitz games and play what you intend to play in tournaments in those blitz games, and then actually take the time to go back and look at where you made mistakes and learn from it. So don't treat blitz as just garbage games where you try anything. Play your real stuff.
Yeah, and I think that advice is particularly good for players over 2,000, but definitely at your level, I can that can be huge. So you're working on slowly but surely working on revamping your opening repertoire, and you've also, I think I saw you've been doing some of Jakob Aagaard's classes. Is that right?
Yeah. So his Killer Chess Academy, formerly
365.
365. Yeah, that's been great. For anyone who doesn't know, it's like Zoom style real-time lessons not where you can't see each other, but it's like there's a presenter giving with a chessboard and their image on the screen, and there's a chat window where they'll ask questions and you type in your responses, and you can do those in real time, or if your schedule doesn't work, they record the lessons and you watch the recordings. And for me personally, unfortunately, my schedule with having 3 young kids, I can't just do a lesson during the day in real time. So I almost always am watching recordings.
Okay.
But the real time ones are even better because you really are on the spot more and feel some ownership in any suggestions you put forward, rather than just nodding along and saying, "Oh, I saw that." Go ahead.
Dare I ask if you're doing his famed calculation homework?
The homework club. I print it out and do as much as I get a chance to do. I have unfortunately not actually submitted it for feedback. I just haven't, made that effort. But I don't know how. I think it'd be fascinating to see a lecture by him and his colleagues of how they come up with such good positions, and they're so instructive. So I know others of your guests have talked about preferring books over like tactics trainers, and I'm firmly in that camp. I mean, just the effort that goes into picking these really brilliant examples is really nice.
That's great. So what kind of schedule are we thinking? Like if we add up the hours
Sure.
you're gonna be able to spend on chess.
And backing up, the one other, so I don't want to make it sound like opening. It's not the case. Would better openings make me a grandmaster by themselves? No. I mean, if I look at how I've lost, and I did this for the purposes of the interview, how have I come up short? When I lose games, why do I lose? Half the time, maybe it's because I don't get out of the opening with an acceptable position, but half the time it's just they're better. I mean, they're better all around. Their calculation is better. They don't have lapses in concentration, and they're really hard to bring down, even when you have the advantage. And I don't mean to sound like they're fundamentally different, because I think the difference between me and a non-IM, you could say all those same things. I mean, I think I'm difficult to beat, but I'm not as difficult to beat as most grandmasters. And so in particular for me, the calculation, I don't think it's a matter of kind of learning more about chess. Is there some concept, like the basics, like, having control of the center is important or something? I don't think there's more kind of bits of advice like that. It's more the knowledge versus skill kind of question. And I need to improve the skill of calculating clearly and maintaining concentration without any lapses.
That's interesting, because when you said you were like trotting out 1G6 to get to the level that you've gotten, I assumed you must be quite good at calculating.
Agreed, but it's a question of degree, right? Okay. I mean, I'm not as good as most GMs. I think I'm maybe better than most IMs, okay. but that's not enough.
Yeah. Okay. So bringing it back to how much you're going to study.
So I actually, since around Thanksgiving, and I wish I could say why, but since around then, I've started tracking what I'm up to. And I have a spreadsheet that I'll refer to now. So what I've done is I just make a tab on a Google spreadsheet for each week. And then I have a tab that's a summary tab where it feeds into with like my data for all the weeks. So I have 12 weeks of data now. And I'm doing, on average, my daily study time has been 105 minutes. So that's an hour and 45 minutes.
Okay.
And that is not the kind of crazy amount. I'm not shutting myself in and studying chess 8 hours a day, both because I don't have that time, but also I don't want to spend my time that way. But honestly, I think that's that's enough. I think slow but steady wins the race here. I don't think it's like dieting or something. If you want to, or getting in shape, you don't go to the gym for 12 hours a day for the next 6 months. You go to the gym an hour 4 times a week for the rest of your life,
Right.
So for me personally, I'm not in a short-term struggle to go get GM norms. I'm in a long-term process of becoming a GM. That's how I view it. And there's a quote that I really like from Maurice Ashley, actually, from the book Tribe of Mentors by Tim Ferriss. And he's talking about his quest for the GM title. And he recounts, after losing a must-win game that would have got him, I think, his final norm, he's consoled by Grandmaster Alex Shabalov. And Shabalov says to him, in order to become a Grandmaster, you must already be one. And he said, I understood right there that I had to get back to work on perfecting myself before I could actually go about winning games. That idea has kept my eyes focused on the process over the result ever since. And as I think about that, it's not a matter of, okay, I'm going to go play these tournaments. I got to get the norms. I need to become a Grandmaster. And once you're a Grandmaster, the norms will come. And I think that's a mistake I've made historically in these last number of years, because I've had limited access to norm tournaments. I have not played in many tournaments because I think, well, what's the point? Why should I go play if I can't get a norm? But I could go learn something if I go play. I could go improve my skills or stay sharp, or be working on my openings and testing them out. To think, okay, now I'm going to flip a switch and go to a norm tournament and have any reasonable chance of success, I think is foolish. So my advice to my former self and to other people going, trying to obtain titles, whether it's, FM, say you're trying to become an FM, but you don't have access to many FIDE tournaments. That doesn't mean you shouldn't play in any tournaments. You should still play because you can still improve and learn. And for me, it's the same. So I would currently be much more interested in a tournament with good competition that gives me a chance to learn, rather than saying, well, it's not a norm tournament, so why expend the resources to do it?
That's a good attitude. Yeah, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
So how do you I get what you're saying, and it's a great philosophy, and I think a lot of listeners could take something from that, even if they're not chasing norms. They just should commit to the slow process of getting better at chess. But nonetheless, you're in kind of a unique situation in that, if you never go out of your way to get norms, you'll probably never get them, right? Like, you could get to 2,500 FIDE, but the norms themselves are just there's so many there's so much randomness in terms of getting it, that if you're not traveling to these invitationals at some point, that it's going to be tough. So have you gotten that far, or are you still in the I just need to get better point of the journey?
No, I mean, I think about it, but I think about it with a longer time horizon than I think some other norm chasers, perhaps, or title chasers.
Yeah, Lawrence is looking, for example, he's been explicit. He wants to do it in 2 years. He wants a bet that it'll be done in 2 years. So,
and maybe that'll work for him. I mean, he's close already. Maybe he only needs one more norm and a few rating points. And if he doesn't have family, there's every chance of success. So maybe I'm gravitating towards a slow but steady philosophy because that's the only one I can, just logistically.
But a lot of people are even people, again, not chasing titles, are in the same boat. So it's good to hear about.
And it seems to make sense to me as chess players. I mean, we live in the future where we're always thinking several moves ahead. And so maybe it's naive, but I think even as I continue to age, I don't see why I would ever give up on the aspiration of the GM title, whether it's by 45 or 55. I mean, that it will always be there, though of course I would like it to be more short term. So concretely, I think once COVID's behind us, I would like to maybe be able to play, say, 1 to 2 norm tournaments a year.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But not, I'm going to go away from my family for 3 months and do 6 norm tournaments in a row. I mean, that's just never going to happen. But I don't think it needs to. I think, but the improvement and needs to happen, and that can happen on an ongoing basis. And then the tournaments, they'll come. And there have been norm tournaments, fortunately for me, organized here in Minnesota by Andrew Tang's father, Patrick Tang. And who knows if those will continue now that Andrew's already got his GM title and moved on to kind of the bigger and better things. But I think it might. But there are just more opportunities locally and around the United States than there's ever been. It's not like back in 2004 when I went to Budapest and had to live there for 3 months.
Yeah. And if you don't mind my asking, like you've talked to your wife, I assume, and obviously this would be their first chess trip. So she's on board at least to some extent with you playing a few tournaments a year. And
yeah. So I'm lucky in that my wife is a chess player. So she's very understanding, as much as one could be with all we have on our plates. But yeah, I met my wife in chess club, and she's a chess player. She has not played in tournaments since college, but she played for Stanford at the Pan Ams. She's about 1800 or so. And like me, chess is always there. She'll play blitz games on her phone most days, but so she understands, and she knows me and knows how competitive and driven I am, and that this bug will always be there. So I think she would be happier to have me have it out of my system and not. But yeah, like I said, I mean, I could never imagine leaving home for more than, say, 2 weeks. Like, even that sounds kind of crazy to me. I mean, maybe 1 week for one tournament at a time. So maybe 2 1-week stints at different times of the year would be reasonable at this point. But I think she's on board with that. Yeah. Cool. And as the kids grow, that should be more feasible, right?
Yeah. Your youngest is 2, right?
Yeah, we have 2, 5, and 7 right now.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. The 2 is the most challenging one in terms of the chess, obviously. Cool. Well, Sean, I think I just have like maybe one or 2 more questions, which is, do you have any books you're particularly eager to crack? Like, is there anything that you're just like super psyched to get into, or is it going to be primarily the killer chess training with Grandmaster Agard and his colleagues and the opening work that you mentioned, building your repertoire through Chessable?
Books I'm excited to crack. I'm not sure. Just 1 second. I mean, all of Agard's Grandmaster preparation books, I mean, I've cracked them, but I haven't methodically completed every exercise in them. I recently completed actually every exercise, I think for the first time ever, that I've gone through an entire book front to back. I went through Universal Chess Training.
Oh, wow.
By GM Miranda that you had on your show. Which I thought was really excellent. And I'm inspired by that, moving on to more books in a more comprehensive front to back kind of way. But I don't think it's a matter of the perfect material. I think it's more about the approach taken to that material, how diligent you are and how seriously you're working. And one thing, that I talked about before with like the maturity and kind of wisdom that comes with age, I would like to put a plug in for reading beyond chess that I think can help your chess. Like, for example, I read the book, The Inner Game of Tennis.
Oh, yeah. Okay? Like a cult classic.
Yeah. And you can take so many lessons from a book like that about just having a quiet mind and kind of improving your performance. And it's funny. I had a really successful outing in the Pro Chess League some years back where I was on board 4 and I went 4-0 one week. And like that had never happened because usually the board 4s get killed. And I had been reading that book a lot, kind of just having the calm mind and not overthinking things really helps. So you can learn, and there's a lot of books out there about like mastery and habits and deliberate practice and so much reading that I think chess players would benefit from instead of just chess books.
Yeah, Michael Lewis has a podcast series called Against the Rules, and he did a series about coaching. So I actually have not read Inner Game of Tennis, but he interviewed coaches from different walks of life. Mm-hmm. And he said that book came up in like every interview, basically. So it's high on my list, but I haven't gotten around to it yet.
Sure. So Inner Game of Tennis and other books by a chess player. There's a book, The Art of Learning by Joss Waitzkin, that I think is really good. And these things, maybe I'm just a bit of a junkie that I like reading this stuff, and maybe it's ultimately distracting me from more hardcore chess studying, but I find it very motivating. And if that's going to get me to study harder, I think it's worth the sidetrack. And one other kind of self-helpy principle that I really like is to compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today. And you don't know what games kind of other people are playing at in their life. Are they, having a successful career, a demanding family life, or are they to compare yourself to someone who's not in your circumstance just doesn't make sense. So focus on yourself and the gradual improvement over yesterday. And that's the road to improvement, in my opinion.
Excellent. All right. Well, Sean, last question. We know you've got the big picture in mind, but do you know what your next tournament, like, we don't even know when COVID's going to be over, but assuming that there's chess the second half of this year, have you thought about what you might play?
Unfortunately, no, I don't have a next tournament.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to plan right now. So
yeah.
So it makes sense. Well, excellent. Well, we'll definitely be rooting for you, Sean. I'll be tracking this story. So both on social media and, if you get a norm or something, or you just want to drop a quick update for me to relay to the audience, I'd be happy to do so. But I wish you good luck. And I really like your perspective. I like the patient approach.
All right. Thanks a lot, Ben. And keep up the great work. I love listening to your show.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. All right. So good luck. And hopefully I'll see you at one of these tournaments.
Okay. Take care.
And I am back with IM Sean Nagle 2 days after our initial interview. There's actually a couple things that we meant to mention but forgot. So we're going to do a quick addendum to our interview. Number one, there were a couple books that Sean wanted to mention. So Sean, I'll let you take it away.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks for humoring me here. There was, we had talked earlier about the Inner Game of Tennis and kind of working on your mindsets as a chess player. So the merits of reading books that aren't chess books necessarily, but could really help you out. And there was just a few more like that I really wanted to call out. And one that's a hybrid, that's a chess book and a mindset book, is chess. It's called Chess Improvement. It's all in the mindset. And you've actually had the authors on, Barry Heimer and Peter Wells. And I just think this is an amazing book. And I've read it already, but it's also the one I can't wait to crack open on my nightstand and reread. So I just think there's so much good advice in here about how to study chess, how to keep your motivation up, what kind of attitude to have. And it's a nice combination of the social science. Barry Heimer is a professor of psychology, and Peter Wells is a British grandmaster. And I kind of suspect this is just such a fertile area for chess improvement. I think at some point there's going to be diminishing returns on how much pure chess content can be generated and consumed, but this is a totally different angle, and it's more working on your mindsets, and maybe you don't learn any new chess concepts, but you apply what you do have in a much more powerful way. So I really like that book, and I'm anxious to do a deeper dive. And that book itself builds on a classic in this space, which is called Mindset by Carol Dweck, which is a very famous book, which if you want to go deeper after chess improvement, I think Mindset by Carol Dweck and the book Grit by Angela Duckworth would be really great. Those 3 books for players, coaches, and parents. I mean, as I was reading it, I found myself thinking, parents should really know this stuff about, not focusing on kind of the short-term results, focusing on the process, how to help your kids deal with setbacks or plateaus, and keep them motivated. Just so much good advice in there. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, thinking about kids, there's a book, also not at all a chess book, but at least motivating to me. It's called Getting Unstuck, Break Free of the Plateau Effect by Bob Sullivan and Hugh Thompson. And, most chess players many of us have been on a plateau for years or decades. And this just has a lot of creative ideas for how to get unstuck and maybe take some new approaches to your training or playing that could be helpful. So all those books I would really recommend. And in terms of a chess specific book, the collaboration between Jakob Ogard and Boris Gelfand, the series of 4 books about Gelfand's games and focusing on different areas of chess. I've also kind of read through, but I haven't really done a deep dive of studying them, and those would be top of mind for me as well.
Yeah, I was with you, Sean. I was feeling good because I'd read the first 3 books you mentioned. Obviously, I read Chess Improvement before I interviewed Dr. Heimer and Grandmaster Wells. And yeah, definitely the kind of book you can go back to. And Mindset is a nice quick read. So that one's kind of low hanging fruit. And Grit's a good book as well. But you got me with Getting Unstuck. And as we record, my Blitz rating is stuck. So I might need to I might need to read that one.
Yeah, it's really good. And it got me thinking of just totally novel approaches. So yeah, we talked earlier, like what got you here won't get you there. Just what you've been doing has got you to a certain level. And if you want to get to that next level, you got to shake it up. And so, like, for example, I haven't really implemented this too much yet, but kind of a weird training idea I had was you hear about blindfold chess, you're training. But, I don't want to just work on blindfold chess. I want to work on building out my opening repertoire. So I thought, well, one idea would be to record myself saying the moves up until the spot. So say I'm doing a Chessable course and I have on there would be a difficult move, I think they call it, or one you repeatedly fail. You could just say the moves leading up to it, make a little file on your phone, and you're listening with your eyes closed and you're practicing your blindfold skills. And then you need to say what the answer is. And that would be a way to kind of combine opening training with blindfold training. And I've never seen that kind of suggested. Maybe it's a worthwhile idea, maybe not, but it's a kind of totally different approach that I think could help shake up a plateau.
Yeah, it's worth a try and involve different senses. Sometimes there can be like more of a trigger if you involve a different sense. So, yeah.
Sure. And one other thing I wanted to touch on with respect to the Gelfand books, and we started, you asked what's in the water in Minnesota? Why are there so many good players, notably beyond me, John Bartholomew and Andrew Tang, but there's quite a deeper bench too of other promising juniors. And a common thread through there that I just really want to acknowledge is my childhood trainer, Edward Zelkin, a FIDE master from Russia who moved to the US in around 1980. And he was actually Boris Gelfand's trainer until Boris was 11. So, a significant role in Gelfand's formative years, because now I guess Boris would be expected to be a GM by the time he was 11. It was just so fortunate for me to have this kind of a chess teacher. He already was doing group lessons at my local elementary school. I just stumbled into like this perfect environment and, quickly went from that to private lessons. And he took me really all the way from beginner to either master or strong expert or something like that, but, has been there the whole way and ultimately, attended my wedding and just is still a really lifelong mentor figure. So I wanted to acknowledge him.
Excellent. Yeah, and when I interviewed Boris Gelfand, I believe vis-a-vis Peter Newhall, fellow Minnesotan's question, I believe that FIDE Master, I'm going to say Gelfand Zelkin. Sorry. Zelkin's name came up, and Boris's face lit up. So, well respected by many.
And like me, we share the thing that he married his childhood sweetheart, who he met through chess. So
that's a nice connection.
It's a funny world. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, Sean, any other addendums? I do think this was worthwhile, so I appreciate you reaching out.
No, I those books and that kind of shout outs. I feel better having those included.
Okay. Excellent.
Just thank you so much, Ben, and I can't wait to keep listening to everything you're doing.
Excellent. Yeah, keep up the good work, and I hope to see you at a tournament sometime.
All right, take care.